James, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Ashwin. Good to be here.
Of course. So I want to start off with, what is your definition of masculinity? How do you define that?
We live at a time where there are many different definitions of masculinity. In previous decades, there was one, and people either rose to that standard or they fell below it. These days, it's part of our individualism that we can create our own definition of what it means to be a man. The definition that I am attracted to and that I would promote on my channel is more of a type of Cary Grant, Gary Cooper, James Bond type of masculinity, right? Where they're rugged and they're capable, but they also have an elegance and a sophistication to them. So there's the light and the dark. I think what I noticed in many ideas of masculinity today was it was one extreme or the other. It was either the Andrew Tate, everything is about muscle, money, arrogance, or it was like beta soy boy. So I wanted to bring back a more traditional version of masculinity and update it a little bit. But especially aesthetically, that's something that I didn't see out there. And that's what interests me.
Yeah, with Harry Styles wearing dresses and
right. I mean, like that's
men,
fine. Like if you wanna wear a dress and be on the cover of Vogue, that's fine. But I think Harry Styles looked better in a suit with his hair slicked back.
No, I understand where you say like it's okay to wear that, which is the same freedom they have to wear what they want to wear is what gives us the freedom to wear what we want to wear.
Exactly.
But I feel like what the traditional outfits are lost when those take over.
Yeah, and it stops becoming the norm. So in previous generations, men would have understood that, the traditional way to dress will be tailored clothing or, more formal style of presentation. And the same goes to women as well. But now that's no longer the default. So we have all these guys wandering around in sweatpants. And I think it's not because they want to be in sweatpants. It's because they don't know what to do. And seeing Harry Styles in a dress on a magazine cover, well, that's not what I want to be. So what are the other options? And that's where people like me come in.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of men are lost in terms of that. Where do you think the desire to be well-dressed comes from, or desire to be seen as a higher level man in terms of aesthetically?
I don't think they're always the same thing. I think the desire to be well-dressed, it can come from just a place of self-respect, like in the same way that you might have a desire to have a clean car, desire to have a nice apartment, right? There's that part of it. There's also caring about how others perceive you. And I think that's not as healthy of a place for it to come from. It's like, do you want people to look at you and use your clothes as a way to decode things about you, about your success, your status? That's kind of like driving a luxury car, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of performative. For me, the reason I enjoy being well-dressed is I just feel good doing it. It was Karl Lagerfeld said, I feel weak in sweatpants, or sweatpants are a sign of defeat. Yes, that's how I feel. I feel weak in sneakers. So for me, it's just been about what makes me feel confident. There's a difference sometimes between comfort in the literal sense and comfort mentally. Like I feel a lot more comfortable talking to you now wearing this than I would if I turned up how I looked when I went for my run earlier.
I have to say, when I came to your party and I was wearing the suit, it had been a while since I dressed like that, and it felt great.
Well, men don't have that much opportunity to do it. You have to
I'm thankful for you for making that opportunity for us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that people want to join the party.
Yeah, what a great time.
But yeah, men used to have very deliberate opportunities.
Right, because everybody, even going grocery shopping back in like the 1800s or the 30s, would be dressing up.
Well, I mean, I don't know about your grandparents, but like if I ever see a photo of my grandfather, he's not alive anymore, but he would wear like a suit and tie on the beach, right?
Exactly.
Roll his trouser cuffs up. But I do think there was a problem for a while, and our parents' generation had this where they had to wear a suit and tie so much that they hated it. Like my dad, for most of his career, wore a business suit, hated it, never enjoyed it at all, took no pride in it. It's like, I have to do this. So I think to an extent we were robbed of the pleasure of dressing up because it was enforced. It's like very few people love their uniform. When I was in school, I had to wear a uniform, and it was a blazer, a tie, a dress shirt, kind of similar to how I might dress now. But because I had to do it, I hated it.
So free will. I mean,
Yeah, I think it's great that we have the opportunity now to express yourself however you want. I think just not many people are actually deliberate about what that is. Like, I don't care if you dress goth, you dress super feminine, you dress masculine, traditional. Obviously, I have my preference. I like what I like, and I kind of like seeing other guys dress that way too. But I care more about the intentionality behind it. And I've always been interested in people who have some like extreme visual presentation, whether that would be like an artist like a David Bowie or a Grace Jones, or if that's a movie character like a Gordon Gekko, Patrick Bateman. There's something about their image which is just pure art.
For Halloween, I was gonna be a pirate, and then I think this was about the time that I found your channel. So I was like, wait, a pirate is really rogue looking.
Yeah.
So I was like, give me an excuse to wear a suit for Halloween. This is you did a video on this, didn't you?
I did, yeah. My worst performing video of all time.
Really?
Actually.
This is before. I didn't see your video. I didn't see that one.
That's because it was the worst performing. Nobody saw it.
I was John Wick, so that gave me the excuse
yeah.
to give me the
You got the
black
hair as well.
Yeah, I put the hair middle part. I did my beard just like him.
That's a good one.
So it was a fun time.
I think we've definitely seen more Patrick Batemans for Halloween in recent years.
That's my next year's.
Yeah, it's funny because that movie. There were a lot of young guys who like really idolize Patrick Bateman.
There were. I think Peterson did a analysis of that for.
Oh, really?
I don't remember what his message was, but he did go into that.
I think a lot of them haven't actually seen the movie. They've seen clips on TikTok. Yeah. So I get that. And I understand like admiring the aesthetics of it for sure. I think, and if you've read the book is like a masterclass on men's style and grooming. He will go into insane levels of detail that they cut out from the movie. He'll be like, I'm wearing my shirt from so-and-so in London. It can't, it has this certain weave and these cuffs. Then my suit is from so-and-so and it has this Laura Piana Super 150 fabric and so-and-so. I wear a double-breasted jacket because it goes into like pages and pages of detail about everything. Yeah. Even his morning routine, they show that in the movie. Like
10 minutes.
But the actual book version is way, way longer. He goes into his shaving routine, why he uses a badger hair brush, etc. Why he does the chin before the mustache and the sideburns.
You brought up the beach outfit. Have you seen his Sean O'Connery, James Bond, what he wears on the beach?
Well, he has a few.
So, yeah. Yep. It's always very good looking on the beach.
Yeah, short shorts back then though.
That's right. I guess that's something that we might have to change.
I would do it, but maybe not everybody would do it.
So you touched upon this, Cary Grant. I want you to dive into the Cary Grant antidote to Andrew Tate. Like, what are the intricacies of that idea?
Subtlety is the main part. Whenever I see a man who is very boastful, the same applies with women, actually. The more somebody tells me how great they are, the more how successful they are, how much money they have, how many women they've had, what cars they have, I always think, what are you so insecure about? What's this performance for? Whereas somebody like Cary Grant is incredibly understated. I mean, you watch some of his movies, he barely even speaks in them, right? But he has a gravity to his presence.
There's aura there.
Yeah, and I understand this is Hollywood, like this is scripted, but to an extent social media is scripted. It's just our version of Hollywood these days. So it's more about his persona. The style, obviously, I like, but even the way he dresses is not performative, it's not flashy. It's actually very, very simple, but it's so effective. His body language, the way he speaks, the way he interacts with women, to me, that just defines gentleman. And one thing that I like about Cary Grant in particular is that I think there's this misconception that you have to be born into a certain class, you have to have a particular accent, like which I happen to have, But Cary Grant is very self-made, right? So he's born in England, very working class family, comes over to America, turns out to be the ultimate gentleman. And you see that with Ralph Lauren as well. I was in the store in Chicago the other day, and it's such an incredible vision. And he has so many different personalities within that brand. There's the Western version, there's the suit room, there's the more nautical thing, then there's the jumpers with the bear and everything. And it's like one man has so much vision, but it's all fake, actually. Like, he's a Jew from the Bronx. It's all fake. But that's what's cool about it. I don't want people to think that because you were born into a certain family or that you come from a certain country that limits the kind of man you can be. You can become whatever you want to be.
So basically, mentality and ambition shouldn't be restricted by
Yeah,
social class.
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so I'll use Ralph Lauren as an example. He
Yeah,
was
sure.
Jew from the Bronx,
Yeah.
and he made it to this incredible level.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's like a mentality shift there that made that possible? Like, what happened
Well,
mentally?
I can't speak for him.
Just in
I can
general,
speak,
like for somebody
yeah,
with nothing
I
to
mean,
get to something.
Like for me, it was more that I was always very imaginative.
Okay.
And I think
Just
people like
inner
that are. I think it's
creativity.
creativity.
Okay.
Yeah. When I was younger, I would spend my not my lunchtimes, I'd spend my evenings at school writing plays. And then the next day I would bring them in and I would like direct the play. So like I've always had a creative element. I enjoyed doing dress up a lot as a kid.
Here we are playing dress up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think often like your true passion in life, people try and find what was my passion. Yeah, I think what were you doing when you were like 6 or 7 years old for no particular reason? Do you have one?
Legos.
Legos. Well, you like construction to an extent. Yeah, yeah. And we have different interests. You know, like every boy in the UK wants to be a footballer.
Right.
I played with Legos too. It's interesting to see like the difference in the way that boys and girls play, because girls like to have very orderly play, right? They have like their dolls and they go to tea and they brush their hair and all this stuff, and it's very nice. Boys will build things, but then what do you do after you've built your Legos? Smash them. Yeah. Mine would always be like there's always some apocalypse at the end of the playtime. Yeah. So like obviously as adults we don't destroy what we've created. But yeah, I do think it's an imagination thing and a creativity thing.
I feel like that. I don't know if I know that wasn't like your whole point, but like the destruction of the thing. I think that's a nod to the inner nature of all men. There's like some sort of, I don't want to say darkness, but like.
I think there is. I think some people just ignore it or try and silence it. Yeah.
I feel like there's also some people who harness it.
Yeah.
And that
in a good way or a bad way?
In a good way.
Yeah.
I mean, we see the people who harness it in a bad way. They're lying on the train tracks, or they're lying in the train stations with syringes in their hands.
I don't know if that's darkness, though. I think that's just like I see a lot of those people as like victims rather than, you know,
okay.
I think honestly
it's
a lot of
bad
people,
example on my part.
Well, I think a lot of people who like truly embrace their dark side on the outward, they tend to be quite successful. Inwards, they will have a lot of issues. Like it's hard to maintain a good relationship if you have very high levels of narcissism, if you're a little bit psychopathic, if you're very Machiavellian. Actually, Machiavellian I think is quite good in a relationship. But typically the dark tetrad qualities, you can use those to become successful in your career. And basically when people are successful in their career, they project an image of success in every aspect of life, right? You make more money, you have the nicer car, the nicer house, honestly, the more beautiful wife. People don't see that wife hates your guts and hasn't had sex with you in 5 years. People don't see that, you know, behind the wheel of your BMW is a huge belly because you don't have the motivation to exercise, things like that. So, yeah, I would say that like typically darkness manifests itself in the material success in our world, and people who are what we would consider to be like on the bottom rung of the ladder in society, I don't necessarily see darkness. In fact, it might be naivety and victimization.
The opposite way.
Yeah.
More on the top.
That's just my theory. Yeah.
Okay. So I want to get into dating.
How should
men approach dating?
Ooh. Well, it depends on what you're looking for. That's a big question. Why don't we do an example? Why don't we walk through like a typical person? Yeah.
Are you comfortable doing yourself? Like, what does dating look like for you?
Yeah, we can do me.
Let's do that.
I don't know how typical mine is.
Use that as a point of reference.
Yeah.
I mean, you 6'2",
Here's my
good-looking dude.
Yeah, the trolls won't let me forget it. My approach to dating right now is this, and I'll talk about what I'm looking for first, and then my methods.
Sure.
You know, for what that is. I've been in 2 very good long-term relationships in my life. I'm now 26. Right now, I'm not looking for a relationship, right? I get so much fulfillment from my work. I get so much fulfillment from my friends. And both of those things, like my current social group and enjoying my job, are quite new to me, actually. That's like within the last year. And I've also only been single since February, so it's not been that long. So I just don't really... I'm definitely not dating with the intention of trying to find a girlfriend. I date because I enjoy female company. Okay. And I think that most men do enjoy female company to an extent, and we need it as well. So when I date, typically, I don't really set any expectation about what I'm trying to get out of it. Maybe it will be like a friends with benefits situation, more of a casual thing. I don't do one-night stands, really. I would like somebody that there can be like a level of investment into and at least a good friendship. But yeah, mostly my dating, I would say it's recreational rather than with a specific outcome in mind. Yeah. And as a result, my dating methods, I do use the apps on and off. Okay. And I actually use them more now because I talk about dating and I want to be on them. I want to be in the field.
First-hand experience.
Yeah, exactly. I want to know what it's like. But I actually meet most people just at bars.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, when it comes to casual relationships, like you said, I tend to steer away from those, not just for me personally, but like also when it comes to advice from my friends or whatever. Because like, I think with casual relationships, it diminishes the value that one person has for the other, and eventually, like when you get married, or if people choose to get married, the more relationships they've had in the past, especially if they've been casual, the less there's depth.
You think so?
Yeah, I do.
I disagree. I have the opposite perspective.
Really?
Because let's use a metaphor, right?
Okay.
Let's say let's say I'm cooking this woman dinner,
okay.
right?
Okay.
I make this food for her and I give the food to her and she goes, "Oh, this is James. This is just unbelievable. It happens to me a lot, you know. This is just the best the best food I've ever eaten. I feel so fulfilled by this meal you've made me." And I go, "Oh, well, you know, where do you usually eat?" She goes, "Oh, I've actually only ever eaten at McDonald's my entire life. I've never eaten anywhere else. Like, that's all I know." I go, "Well, you are not a good judge. You don't have enough experience to know what's good. You don't have enough experience to understand the depth of my culinary abilities, right? If I do the same thing for a woman and I say, 'Oh, you know, where do you normally like to eat?' And she goes, 'Well, I went to Gina Giorgetti's last night, then I was at RPM, and then I was at Nobu and all of this stuff.' I go, 'Oh, wow, like this woman really knows her stuff.' So the fact that she appreciates my cooking means a lot more to me." And personally, when it comes to like the emotional side of the relationship, I think we need perspective and I think we need data. Yeah. I think we need perspective, and that comes through experience. Honestly, I think it was hard in my previous relationship. She was my second serious girlfriend, but when we met, it was like my 6th ever first date, right? So I think it was actually hard for me to understand what I liked about her and what I didn't like about her because I didn't have enough experience with other women. So experience takes different forms, right? If you go and sleep with 50 women as a drunken one-night stand, that's going to give you less experience than 50 first dates where you don't even kiss. In my opinion, that's the different types of data. So I don't feel like it makes it more shallow. I don't think that human love is finite. We all have an ability to love people, lose them, love again. Yeah, you get like wounded to an extent, you have baggage, but that's just life, you know.
So there shouldn't be like a limit. It's just
I mean, if you're sleeping with like 300 women in your life, like maybe that's not good.
But like in terms of just like girlfriends in general or relationships,
I think you got to find the one that's right for you.
Right.
Okay. I think there is a point to which if you're a serial dater, right, you go on 3-4 dates a week for years, you just can't find the one. There's something wrong there on you. That's not just bad luck.
Right.
But I do think also the other end of the spectrum, I think a lot of guys that watch me, they are like late teens, early 20s, waiting for marriage, or, you know, the first girl that comes along that's the friend of a family or from church and that shows interest in them, they marry them. It's like, it's quite unlikely that the best person for you already exists within your social circle of like 10 women of available age. So I think the truth for me lies somewhere in the middle. I actually recently wrote down on a note document the name of every woman I've ever dated, like first date or beyond, or slept with. Some of them I forgot, but for the most part, there was like, I'll be completely honest, there was like 35 women on there, right? And I just went through each one of them and kind of reflected. And the experiences that I've had with some of them gave me a new perspective on the other ones. So I have a different perspective on my previous relationship, having been on maybe 15 dates since that ended. Because you spend time around people and you go, gosh, you know, after I spent a few hours in this woman's company, I feel exhausted. I feel so drained. Whereas other people kind of inspire you. Like other people give you a spring in your step. So I think listening to your own reaction, it's not just about who's the most beautiful woman. Do we look good on paper? Is she the right height? Is she the right boob size? Does she want children like I do? How does that person make you feel? Because if you end up living together and being an actual couple, that's going to have a huge impact on your life. That's like, you know, you've got to take this drug every day. How does the drug make you feel?
You mentioned, okay, so you had 6 girlfriends or like the 6th date, and then you only had 2 serious relationships.
Yeah.
What are the signs that you look for in a woman to go from just like a first or second date to a serious, relationship with her?
Not many women get past first date with me.
Okay.
Or second. There has to be an emotional connection for sure. That is what needs to be there for me to even consider continuing dating them. Probably the most I've dated somebody since my last relationship was about 5 to 6 dates. But even then, you know, like 2 months in, I had no emotional connection to her, right? You want to feel like you're at least on your way to being in love with them. That's very important. And I've actually I've never had that as much as I would like. When I think about, you know, my previous girlfriend and I, we had a more of a casual relationship for about 2 months. And I remember just thinking, you know what? I don't want to. I had a day trip with another girl that I was doing the same thing with. We went to San Diego together. And I remember thinking, like, I don't want to be here with her. I'd rather just be with, her name was Augustina. I'd rather be with Augustina. And a couple of days later, I was around her house and I said, look, like, we have a great time together. I don't think I want to invest in other people. Do you feel the same way? And then from then on, we were a couple, and it was never a question of doubt about that from either of us. So, yeah, what I look for is, do I want to spend more time around this person? Do I feel good about this person? Do I think they are a good person? And do they feel the same way?
Yeah, dating today is... have you seen the Tinder statistic? It's like 2% of the men get like 98% of the women.
I've heard a variety of statistics similar to that
yes,
effect.
You would,
yeah. I think it's broadly true.
Okay.
That dating apps are not great for the majority of guys, right? And it's twofold. I think one, it does promote very narrow-minded selection decisions from men and women, more so women though. Because it's just natural as well that women are more selective. You think biologically, right?
Right.
A man has sex with a woman, can run off in the jungle, never see her again. Very low consequence for choosing the wrong mate. For a woman, huge consequence for choosing the wrong mate. So it does make sense. Yeah. And this is probably a very controversial idea.
Go ahead. There's
and then I'm not saying this is right. I'm not saying this is right or wrong. But if you look at the animal kingdom, or the way that our ancestors were thousands and thousands of years ago, it is true that a small percentage of the men were mating with most of the women. Right. And there was quite a big portion of the men who died out as a result. And that's, as a result, most of us don't have like physical and mental disabilities, because those are the kinds of things that got weeded out.
Selection.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Natural selection. And I think dating apps have brought that hardwired evolutionary tendency in women into modern life. And that doesn't really fit in with our idea of society.
Was it dormant for some time? Like, had it?
Well, I think women were so like subjugated in terms of their role in society. I mean, if you think back into the 18th century, 19th century, dating didn't exist, right? It was like kind of an arranged marriage, and the woman didn't really have a whole lot of say in it in a lot of cases.
So natural selection was
it was like, well, your father has 10 goats, so if you give me the goats, then I'll give you my my daughter. That's how it was. So like dating, as we call it, really only came about in like the 1920s in the West. Yeah. And dating without consequences only came about in the 1960s.
Yeah,
not that it's without consequences, but with...
As soon as we got contraceptives.
Exactly, yeah, reduced consequences. Yeah. So we're trying to navigate this thing that's like 60 years old with ancient tendencies. And I don't think men haven't had to change too much, because men have always had this tendency of just wanting to mate with as many women as possible. And today... they still want to do that, but they're struggling to do that.
They just don't have the opportunity.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the people that, I think to some extent, it's good to reserve certain things for the right person, right? The more you give something away, inherently it loses its value. And that's true for men and women. But I do think some men also retreat into... They retreat into a sense of self-purity, kind of as a coping mechanism, because dating is hard.
So to put it in plain terms, they can't get anybody, but like they say...
So it's very difficult to get a woman.
Right.
So it's easier for me to just say, oh, I don't want that anyway. That's degenerate. It's like bullshit. Yes, you do.
If you had the opportunity, you would take it.
You do. Yeah. Now, if somebody has been through that period of their life where they've had the opportunity to be with many women and they've like turned their back on that, that's kind of a different story. But if you're 18, 19, you haven't had that opportunity. Like, you don't know. And if you are 18, 19, 20, you haven't entered the dating market yet, because the dating market doesn't really begin until you leave college. I've seen these couples, maybe you have too, where it will be like the 18-year-old guy, the 18-year-old girlfriend, and like as soon as you guys enter the actual open market, this isn't going to happen. Exactly. Yeah.
Because you've had this world open up to you, and
more so for women as well.
Exactly.
More so for women. Right. Yeah, for guys less so. I mean, it's harder. Just being a young guy is harder. Even at 26, I would have more access to women if I was 32. Even I've been on dates with girls who are like 24, and I'll talk about this kind of stuff. They're like, yeah, I go on a lot of dates with like 50-year-olds. And I'm thinking, fuck, if I was 50, this would probably be way more. This would probably be way better. Yeah, exactly.
You got so many more resources. Like, your competition is much less.
Well, I think there's also just like the presence of an old man. I think that's attractive. In the same way that the presence of a young woman is attractive to men. There is something, we call it daddy issues or whatever you want. There is something about like those lines on your face, that gray hair, that just turns some women on.
I think it's a sense of safety. This man is more experienced.
Maybe.
He knows what he's doing. Protectiveness. I guess that's one aspect.
Maybe. I mean, if the guy is 50 and dating a 21-year-old, he's probably not very safe to me. Not like in a sexual way, but I question people who would do that, because even like as I'm 26 now, would I date like an 18-year-old? Probably not.
But I think it's different if you're dating an 18-year-old or when you're at 26 than a 50-year-old dating
exactly. So like,
yeah,
exactly. But even now, I can't really.
If you were 50 and you can't date somebody half your age, would you?
You can, but I would question it. Like, if a woman wanted to date me seriously and she's 50, I'd think, what is wrong with her?
That's true. Okay.
This is my favorite topic right now.
Yeah?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time...
I'm enjoying it.
Because I want to help more guys with dating. I really do.
I have to say, the market is tough. Like, I had... I've actually never had a dating app before. Never. I had my buddy download Tinder, and he would get 7 to 8 matches a day.
Okay.
And out of that 7 to 8, he would probably get 1 or 2 dates a week.
That's quite a high ratio of matches to dates.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get that many matches. I think if you really try with the messaging and you're quite good at it, I think you could probably get a date for every 10 matches, maybe less.
Do you
if
think it's
if you
better to
really
go with the
try.
dating route app or in person? Like you meet
Both.
somebody at the
Both.
bar?
I think
Okay.
people compartmentalize it too much.
Mm.
They go like, oh, I want to meet somebody in person, so I can't be on a dating app. Or, well, I'm on the app, so I don't need to go out. Right? You do both. Do both. It's like saying, should I apply for a job or should I try and get a referral? Both. Increase your options.
That's right.
Yeah.
What's the best route to go if you're going out to meet somebody?
Don't worry about it too much.
Okay.
I
Like it shouldn't be your primary focus.
Yeah, I meet people all the time when I'm out, but I don't go out with the intention of trying to meet women. Now, there are certain environments that are more advantageous to that, right? If you're going to a place where it's like, there's a bar I really like in Chicago called Richard's Bar, right? But it's full of old men, right? So if I make that like my primary social hub, I'm not going to meet many women there. There are other bars that I enjoy where I just like it, but yeah, there's women there. There's attractive women, and I know that typically if I go there with my friends, I'll end up talking to somebody, maybe leave with a couple of numbers. So like, I'm more drawn to those types of places, but I don't spend my time there looking around the room. I don't approach women really very much. I only really approach women if they're like burning
eye contact.
Yeah, burning holes in the back of my head. Or, sometimes in your group, conversations just open up naturally.
Yeah.
So I would say, like, don't overthink it, but also be smart, And I always dress well. So that's part of it too. I'm not dressing well because of women. I'm dressing well because I just want to do that. And yeah, I like to go to places that nice women also like to go to. But it's not really like, if I'm going out with my friends, we don't gather rounds beforehand and go like, well, what's the strategy for tonight? It doesn't matter. And I think that women can really smell that neediness on guys. I don't do
desperation.
Yeah, I don't really do I don't do game. I don't do pickup, anything like that. I just talk to people. I do games once we begin dating.
Just casual conversation, see where it goes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. I hate to get off your favorite topic.
Yeah, no worries.
But let's. I want to move on to confidence.
Okay.
So, do you how would you rate your confidence level right now, James?
High.
High.
It's always been high though.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are the steps to get there for an average person?
Healthy childhood.
It's cruel.
No. Actually, not necessarily healthy. It could be the other way around. I think there's a few elements to confidence, right? One of them, which I try and help people with the most, is just how do you look? Because if you had to walk into a crowded room, you could reduce my confidence significantly by not allowing me to style my hair, not allowing me to shower, brush my teeth, give me sweatpants. I'm not as confident. I've reduced my confidence quite a lot. But this is how people are going around everyday life, right? See people out all the time. I think you haven't even showered today. So that's one thing, right? Presentation, hygiene. Then you get on to more performative levels of confidence, which would be like eye contact, body language, taking up space. And I say performative because to an extent, yeah, you're changing physical things, but it does also change the way you feel. Like if I sit like this, I don't feel as confident now, right? It's also really uncomfortable. So that's part of it. And then I think, if somebody needs to work on their confidence, what I would encourage them to do would be change your behavior gradually, and that will change the narrative that you tell about yourself. Because our understanding of ourselves changes how we feel, right? So I feel confident because in the past, I tried to talk to this girl and it didn't really go very well, and I kind of acted nervous and weird and she left, right? Going to make you feel less confident.
Negative events.
Yeah, exactly. So one thing that I always encourage guys to do is you want to get better at talking to women, talk to people, but people that it's very low stakes, right? Like talk to the clerk at the grocery store, talk to the old women that you see. Just talk to people that you don't want anything from and get good at that. It's also about, I use this metaphor of if you said to your friends, tomorrow morning, let's go for a run, 7 a.m., right? I'll meet you at the park. Yeah. And the friend goes, okay, great, I'll be there. And then you get there at 7 a.m. and the friend isn't there, you go, okay, well, I'll just do this by myself, right? You go for your run. Next time you come home and the friend says, I'm so sorry, like I slept in, tomorrow though, you'd be like, yeah, bullshit. Like you're not going to be there. You're not confident in them anymore because they didn't do what they said they would do. So I think building self-confidence, like from a deeper level, is doing what you said you would do. And I said that my confidence has always been quite high. I think that's because my discipline has always been quite high.
So discipline has a very big effect on confidence.
It does, but it doesn't necessarily have an effect on social abilities. Different skill set.
So social ability just comes from practice.
I think
like
so.
Getting out there.
And there's like a genetic level to it as well, of like
really.
Well, the way you were raised. Yeah.
Okay.
Some kids are confident,
Yeah,
like some 8-year-olds could do a podcast like this and think like I'm, and some 8-year-olds, you see it, when you have like the Jumbotron at a sports game, some kids love it. Some kids are like, oh gosh, I'm so embarrassed. I was actually quite shy as a kid to an extent, but then I was like very performative. Like I liked acting. I liked music.
I feel like if they put you on the Jumbotron right now, you'd like get up and
I wouldn't actually.
No?
I'd hate that. Yeah. I think there's different forms of confidence. I guess. Like I suppose like quiet confidence.
You are the quiet confidence. I was just about to say.
That's what I like. Not on a podcast. I'm like talking your ear off, but typically, quiet confidence. You could think about two different guys in a bar, right? One of them's going up to all the women, using all the lines, making them laugh, kind of making a fool of himself. And then there's the other guy who stood there looking ahead, got his drink, still. Who's more confident? Both of them are confident in a way. It's which one do you want to be?
Aspects.
Yeah.
I feel like I used to be the first one, and now I'm the second one.
Yeah.
After I saw one of your videos, I saw how would I don't know if this is the name of the video, like how would James Bond pick up a girl or something like that.
Oh yeah, the James Bond approach to women.
Yes, that's what it was. Because like before, like we go out with the boys, like the guys,
right?
And I think I'll give you an example. We were at the Apple Store, in August.
Yeah.
And I invited.
This is where you go to hit on women.
Horrible venue, but I just invited these two girls. I just saw them, and the guys were but then now it's like I don't really go out of my way for them. If it happens, it happens. Like that's my mentality.
Yeah, it's in a way it's more work to want to attract people than chasing them.
Exactly,
because you have to do something that's like attractive, right? Yeah.
I mean, I guess dressing well is part of that.
It's one of like there's only so much we can change in this life about ourselves. I think there's more than we think. But yeah, clothing is like one of the most immediate and cheapest ones. Yeah. Like
a segue from that, I want to talk about men's mental health today.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on men's mental health? Is there something wrong with it today, or should it be changed? Is it fine as it is?
Yeah, people have always had mental health problems, right? We have a greater awareness of it now. And I think any time that you become hyper aware of anything, on one hand, you solve a lot of problems that would have gone unresolved, but you also create this channel for people to label themselves and like victimize themselves. So do I think that a lot of men are struggling or were struggling and now they can access that help? Yes. Are the men who like victimize themselves of, if I didn't have this anxiety, if I didn't have this depression, I could do so and so. Yes. Overall, I think it's probably been a net positive because, I mean, if you look at like suicide rates for men, it's still like shockingly high.
It's high.
Right. I do think that the therapy system, and I've had experiences with therapy is kind of designed for and practiced mostly by women, right? Therapy is all about talking, right? Men like action. We like a plan. Women love to talk. It's a classic male to female argument. Oh, I give her these solutions and she doesn't want them. She just wants to talk. So therapy, like in that sense, works great for women. And the vast, vast majority of therapists are women as well. I think a lot of men could benefit from a different form of therapy that's actually more problem-based and solution-based, which I think is why a lot of them gravitate towards self-improvement.
So they're finding their own solutions.
They're finding their own solutions, yeah. And therapy is like restaurants. most of them are terrible. The concept is great. You know, you go to a top
Right.
restaurant, amazing experience. But most therapists are like Olive Garden. And especially now, there is this demand in the market for therapy.
Is that like a one size fits all?
One size fits
Yes.
all, not as qualified as I think they should
Okay.
be.
Okay.
Not as prepared to invest in their, I don't know if they will even call them patients anymore, clients. Very rushed. And I think like the whole telehealth thing plays into that as well. You know, it's very
Yeah, there's
impersonal.
less intimacy,
Yeah,
so to
so
speak.
you know, one day I would love to pay like $500 an hour for like a top psychoanalyst and just go through everything.
See what's wrong with me.
Yeah, like not even what's wrong with me, just understanding myself
Mm.
more. And I think I try and do that. Like I'm kind of like an amateur psychologist, I would say. So yeah, I think it can be great, but it's just become a bit of a everyday commodity now, mental health and therapy. And I think that's cheapened it to some extent. But overall, I'm glad that, you know, we're having these types of conversations because before we wouldn't. And I think it's helped more. It's definitely helped more men than it's hindered, right? I'm not saying there aren't hindrances to, you know, perhaps we cry about our feelings and go, oh, I have anxiety, all this kind of stuff, right? It's like, okay, man the fuck up.
Yeah.
But overall, I think it's a very good thing.
No,
Yeah.
I'm completely on board with
Right.
your idea
Yeah.
of there's the victimization,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't see the point in that. There's no like I don't see the end result of the victimization because, like you said, men want action,
Yeah.
but victimization just doesn't lead to a solution.
Well, I think a lot of the victimization is self-victimization, though. I think
What do you
it's
mean?
like self-diagnosis, or you receive a diagnosis and you see that as, oh, it's not my fault. I'm just depressed.
So you see
right?
it as an
Like,
excuse.
yeah, it's an
Okay.
excuse. There's also like a narcissistic edge to it of I'm so special that I have that. I've seen this with like very mentally ill people. Like I'm so special that I have this anxiety. I'm so special that I have this depression. Nobody can help me. It's like this romantic thing of oh gosh, the
I'm
woe is
special,
me.
I'm
Nobody
unique.
could understand the depths of my sorrow and fear. You know, like you're fucking a poet. So there's that element to it as well. But yeah, I think those types of people always find something to latch onto
Yeah.
as well. Yeah. I've never actually when I was like a younger child I had like looking back I definitely had OCD. Like definitely had it. And because as a result like at that time mental health wasn't a conversation, right?
Yeah.
So as a result like I kind of like suffered through that for a few years. And as an adult, it honestly like just went away. Or like I can still feel it to an extent, but it transformed completely into like healthy forms. Like that's why I'm able to be very disciplined. Like to me, doing things that I've set out in order is like, oh, that's just pure ecstasy, right? Whereas like dysfunctional behaviors, like compulsive hand washing, intrusive thoughts, like they just went away. And I wonder now, like if mental health had been a big discussion like it is now, and I'd had like a therapist when I was 13, would I be in a better place today? Probably not.
No, you
Just
would
I'm
still
just
have
yeah.
it,
I think I would because it would have become like part of my identity.
That's my problem with the therapy today.
It can become an identity.
It's taken to an extreme of what it should be.
I think there's also a difference between therapy and mental illness, and it's okay to go and have therapy without diagnosing yourself as anything. What's a big problem is in the healthcare system in the US, and also I think this is true of other public healthcare systems, is in order to justify the therapy as a legitimate medical expense, they have to diagnose you, right? I remember I don't know who it was now, somebody very close to me at the time was going through therapy, and they literally had to be diagnosed with something in order to get the therapy on their insurance, right? So the therapist would say, I'm going to diagnose you with so-and-so. And she'd think, well, I don't think I have that. But I have to give you this label. Otherwise, you know, Aetna or whoever isn't going to approve it. Yeah. Or other healthcare providers are available before Aetna sues me.
I'm going to get canceled for that. I'm going to get a cease and desist in my
exactly.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
Let's see. What do you think of gender roles? I don't know if did we touch upon this?
Not really.
Because gender roles have shifted.
Yeah, because I mean, you know, like I talk about masculinity on my videos. I get invited to talk about masculinity on my videos. I'm actually very interested in just gender as a whole.
Okay.
I just don't talk about femininity because I'm not a woman.
Right.
But like, I find it pretty interesting. I really do. Like, I find traditional.
I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I find traditional femininity pretty interesting, and I think that there is an equivalent of me out there, somebody for women. I don't know if they exist, but like, there's a gap in that market for sure. I very much enjoy traditional gender roles in many ways, especially aesthetically. Like, I like very feminine women.
I don't think you're not alone in that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, not just for me, but like there's
there is a lot of men, and most women want a masculine man. Ask them on the street.
Yep.
They'll tell you outright. Most women don't want the Harry Styles in a dress.
Yeah.
Like, some of them do. Some of them do, but some of them also
I think it's a very small minority.
or some of them want that, and they also want a masculine man. They might be like, well, he might wear a dress from time to time, but like, he does so and so and so and so, which is very masculine. So I think it's okay to enjoy traditional gender roles. And I think, I get accused, I say accused, people think that I'm really conservative, like I'm really, really Republican, right? I'm not. I do like traditional gender roles as a choice, as like a freedom of expression, to be like, if I want to play that role, let's say we're dating, right? If I want to dress a certain way, I want to book the restaurant, I want to pull your chair out, I want to open the door for you. I enjoy playing that role. And it's part of your freedom as a woman to enjoy playing the equivalent of that role. Doesn't mean that we have to have like a 1950s type marriage where I'm in control of every single decision and you wait at home until I come back and tell you how it is. But do I want to like play that role a little bit? Do I want to like fetishize it? Yeah, absolutely.
So you think there's a balance?
I think it's like, it works differently for different people.
Okay.
Right?
Like
yeah.
for you personally.
Some people, and I'm still figuring it out, I suppose. Like, I think my previous relationship, on the surface, we had like a very traditional gender dynamic, but she was studying like to work. I wanted her to do that. She coincidentally had like a very traditional feminine job, but in terms of like our ideas about society or personal freedom, women's freedoms, men's freedoms, I like people to do what they want to do. That's how I feel about it. So yeah, if I enjoy a certain gender dynamic in my private relationship, that's fine. If you want to go and be doing the total opposite, that's fine too. I really don't care.
Where do you think it crosses a line where you have to say, like, you don't want it anymore?
Where it's too traditional or too untraditional?
Either way.
I wouldn't want a relationship that's like the Stepford Wives, where she doesn't have her own thoughts and feelings. I need somebody who's quite intellectual.
Okay.
Like, I want to have these kind of discussions like on a date or like with my wife, I enjoy somebody who has their own opinion. They don't just go, oh yes, that's right, husband, thank you for laying down the law. Because I would get bored. Yeah. I'd get really bored. And I think a lot of men would actually. Sounds great for like 2 weeks, but try sitting down for dinner with somebody every single night for the rest of your life that doesn't have their own opinions about stuff. Man, that's not good. Where does it flip the other way? Well, I wouldn't want to be a house husband. I think that majority of men get a lot of purpose and pleasure from work. Even if they don't like their job, there's something about just actually doing something productive that's very important. We talk about men's mental health. Make a guy unemployed and see his mental health just go, right. Yeah, exactly. Like, everybody knows that, right? Whether it's an office guy or a guy working on the docks. So I don't think that dynamic is healthy for many men, to be honest. I think it might be, something that, honestly, people who are a little bit what you would call neurospicy or neurodivergent, like, somebody who doesn't enjoy being out, a man who would prefer to be at home with his books or making crochet or something. There are people like that. And maybe they want a woman who is serving a different role. But I've found from my experience, I mean, I live in Chicago. Most of the women who are here, who are my age, moved here for their career. So most of the women that I date are like career women.
Right.
Yeah, and they'll even like describe themselves as like, I'm a boss babe.
Boss lady,
You know?
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of cringe when they say that, to be
Yeah.
honest. Not that I don't support their career, but it's just like such a
The way
cliche.
they say
It
it.
would be
how
like
to
me
say-
going
yeah.
like, well, I'm kind of an alpha male. You know? It's
Right,
like,
exactly,
oh, God,
exactly.
please. Well, where was I going with this?
The other extreme, like house husband. And,
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah. So, but even those types of women want a more traditional gender dynamic.
Do you
Right.
think they would lower like their drive for such a thing? Like,
Yeah, because the other drives take over. Like
Mm.
the drive to start a family takes over.
Okay.
The drive to have
Right,
children takes
right.
over. I also think that eventually you realize that maybe the deal isn't as good as you think it is. You know, you trade away your 20s and 30s as a woman working for a corporation rather than working for a family that you've built together. And I feel the same way. Like, I don't live in the corporate world anymore, and I'm glad I don't, because I never wanted to be in the position of going, I've got to choose between my son's football match or a board meeting. Fuck that. I want to be there for my family, you know? So for me, I would never be in a relationship with a woman that was going to put her career before our family, because I wouldn't even do that. So why would you be with somebody that has an opposite value about that to you?
how does masculinity play into fatherhood along the lines of that?
That's a good question. I think boys and men of all ages need a role model, right? They need an example of feminine love, of motherly love, and they need an example of the kind of man that they might grow in to be one day. And today, we have a lot of boys growing up without that role model. And every single piece of research will find out that boys that grow up without a father have worse outcomes typically in life. It doesn't seem to affect women as much, actually. It doesn't seem to affect young girls quite as much.
In terms of having no father or no
Yeah,
mother?
no father.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you know, typically if parents break up, the boy is with the mother, right?
Mm.
So that will influence that. And I think, you know, my happiest memories as a child would be like playing football with my dad in the garden, him teaching me to ride a bike. These are experiences that would I have had with my mother? I don't think probably not. Yeah. So it's essential that there is this yin and the yang, because the father and the mother will show different parts of life to the son, right? They introduce different stages.
Yep.
Even something like a sex talk, right? Which is like so awkward, you know? Doesn't matter if it's the dad or the mom doing it, but you know,
Who would you rather have?
well, yeah, like I'm glad that my dad had that conversation with me. It lasted about 30 seconds, but but you know, I think that was also like men of the baby boom generation are a little bit less comfortable talking with
I feel like
things
if I were
like
talking to my
that.
son, it'd be like 30 seconds about.
You think
as
so?
well. Maybe.
I haven't thought
You
about
know
this
what?
one yet.
I'll take that back.
Yeah.
It might take a few minutes. I feel like because we're more open about it.
Yeah.
Our generation, or like, you know.
I think so.
sort of
I
our
haven't
parents.
thought about
No, I
how I would give
haven't
that
either
talk or
till
what I would
right now.
say. And I don't really remember what he said to me now either. I remember my mom driving me to like a house party when I was about 14 and saying like, if you do anything, you know, wear a condom.
It's better than what my dad said.
But I was like, I was not doing that at 14. You know, I was like, thanks, mom. Like,
Yeah.
I'm glad you think that way, but that's not happening.
Yeah, you guys think I'm getting action, but no, I'm not.
Yeah, not at 14 for sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I think I do feel some sort of empathy for boys with no father.
Me
It's
too.
definitely there.
There's something I'm very passionate about in terms of causes that, you know, really speak to me. Children is always a big one, because the more that I've learned about every area of life, you know, my channel's so broad, but like, let's take dating, for example. There are so many things that show up as an adult in the way that you date and the way you form relationships that happen as a result of your childhood experiences. So closely related. So it's kind of our duty, in a sense, to not fuck up our children as much as we can. We all do it. You know, everybody does it to an extent. Nobody's a perfect parent. But there's definitely you know, if there's a way to mess up a child, which there is, we all know that, there's a way not to do it. And I think that's the role
There's
of being...
multiple ways.
Yeah, there's infinite ways. Yeah, but that's the role of a father is, you know, basically to raise your son in a healthy way as possible. And one thing I told my parents, like, very openly, I said, you know, not that I don't care, I'm very grateful for everything you did for me, but honestly, the only thing that really matters is, like, I had a happy childhood. Like, I'm not disturbed by things that happened to me as a child, and so many people are. And I was like, sincerely, like, thank you. And they're like, anyway, what do you want to drink? You know, like, they brushed it off totally, but hopefully it sank in.
It was a wholesome moment for you and for them. It was like
yeah.
I've seen the opposite of that. So I mean, you mentioned happy childhood, and it turned out great. But then there's also the opposite end where people had a traumatic childhood, but they also turned out great.
Right.
They're like, okay, well, then there's like this, they break the cycle of that or trauma or whatever, and then they use it to get better.
That takes a lot of work, though.
That's true.
Yeah. And typically it doesn't happen until you've, like, learned from your mistakes a lot.
Yeah, there's a very long recovery process.
Yeah. And there are still things, like, for me that I'm very aware that I need to work on, and, like, I'm delving into, you know. I'll go, oh, that's kind of interesting. I wonder why I'm like that, you know. I also had, like, experiences as a teenager in, like, very early sexual relationships that were not healthy, that kind of I had to do work to undo those.
Okay.
Yeah, I was very lucky that I had very healthy relationships after that, because I remember I was so, like, long story short, I was with this woman that was 22 years older than me from the ages of, like, 15 to 20. I lost my virginity to her. You can imagine what kind of person
she was. 22 years older than you? Or
yeah,
she was
so she was, like, 38.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was, like, a very terrible relationship in many ways.
I can
imagine. Like, you know, like a damaged person inflicting as much damage on an undamaged person as you can get. But I was really lucky that after that, I had a really healthy, like, loving relationship with a normal girl my age. And I'd always had, like, suspicions that, you know, things that those experiences had taught me weren't really true. Like, she would say, like, and I think a lot of manipulative people will say this of, like, oh, you think I'm bad. You don't know what other people are like, you know? And I remember thinking, I don't know if, like, a normal girl would do this, to be honest. Like, this seems kind of crazy. And then when I had the experience of a normal, healthy relationship, it was so validating to go, I knew I was right. I knew that was weird. Yeah. So that really helped. Like, I owe a lot of credit to her, to be honest, for undoing a lot of that. Because if I'd left that relationship and entered into another unhealthy one, which a lot of people do, right? God knows what would have happened. But I don't think I naturally attract negative people. Some people do, right? Some people just draw in people with problems.
I feel like you could work on that. Like,
I mean, like, the number one thing really, I think, for a positive relationship experience is actually just your partner selection. Yeah. Okay. I always like this story of, you ever heard the story of the frog and the wasp?
No, I'm not.
Okay. So a frog and a wasp, and they approach a stream, and the wasp says to the frog, like, oh, can you give me a ride on your back, and, you know, you can hop on the lily pads. And he goes, well, I don't really want to because I think you're going to sting me. And he goes, well, if I sting you, like, we'll both die. So why would I do that? And he goes, okay, fine. Come on the back. So they're hopping around on the lily pads. In the middle of the stream, wasp stings the frog. He goes, what'd you do that for? He just goes, it's just my nature. Just my nature. And people I do have a slightly cynical view of people, that we typically repeat the same behaviors over and over again, and you can have an argument about it and you can try and resolve it, and they go, I'll change, you know, in future I'll do this instead of this, but then they do the same thing again. So trying to find the most, nobody's perfect, but the most suitable for you just in the first place. And this is why dating experience is important, I think. Trying to select that person. Yeah.
It's more experience.
Because, like, people can change, but it's a lot harder to change somebody than just to find somebody who's, you know, in working order. And I think this is why guys, like, have this Madonna complex as well around women, of, like, purity, virginity, young age. It's like, well, she's been less exposed to negative things that might give her baggage, trauma. And I can see that. You just have the flip side of, like, she doesn't know shit about anything, you know, as none of us do when we're, like, 21. Yeah.
Do you think that, like, abusive relationship in the beginning, is there some part of you that's grateful for it because of you learned from it, or it's affected you in a positive way in future relationships?
It's a good question. I've not thought about it that way. I mean, she's definitely not at the top of my gratitude journal.
Right.
Yeah.
Obviously, but
I think there is an element of that.
okay.
It didn't have to go on as long as it did for me to learn those lessons. Yeah, that was kind of like digging my own grave to an extent. But yeah, for sure. I mean, it was like a masterclass in how not to be in a relationship. And I'm very cognizant now of anything that kind of sniffs of those unhealthy behaviors or patterns. I'm very, like, so if I notice that a woman is like overly jealous very early on in a relationship. I remember I was dating this Colombian girl, the one that I said I dated for like 5 or 6 weeks. She'd be like, I know you're on dates with other girls. Like, in a very jealous way. And this would be like our second date. I'm like, of course I'm going on a date with another girl. It's like a second date, right? So I just thought like, oh, I am not, this isn't what I invite into my life, so I think you never know what a flag represents until you've seen it before, right? And people talk about red flags, but let's say somebody shows you the flag of Azerbaijan, you've never seen it before, you don't know that's Azerbaijan. You go, there's some colors there. So I have the experience of these are the signs, these are the symptoms. Avoid these.
Got it. So James, this is my final question.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you think what does the future of masculinity look like in your eyes?
I feel very optimistic actually about the next generation, because for the first time ever, young boys are growing up. Yeah, they have pornography and video games more than we ever did, but they're also growing up with positive information at a scale that we've never ever had before. And there is going to be a decent percentage of those boys that take those messages on board. And, if you're consuming like content even like this and you're like 17, that's so more enlightened than what I was doing at 17.
Way ahead of the game.
Yeah, way ahead of the game. So I feel really positive about it. And I think just the very fact that we're having these discussions, it allows people the opportunity to be self-aware about what kind of man do I want to be. So, in some ways it's going to be harder and more distracting than ever, and VR is going to get better. And like, I think we're going to maybe have the two extremes, like, yeah, there might be more incels out there. There might be more people stuck in their mom's basement, but there's also going to be a bunch of guys who took themselves seriously from a really young age, were intentional about the kind of person that they wanted to become, and they're going to thrive as a result of it. I mean, even look at something like going to the gym. How many guys our age go to the gym? It's quite a lot, right? Yeah. It's quite a high percentage. Go back 20 years, 30 years, wasn't very many. We've just become more aware of the benefits of exercise and how easy it is to do. So I think that kind of metaphor is going to apply to mental attitudes, the ways we present ourselves. I feel optimistic as well because, I do these events in person, and we haven't had so many young people under 25 in Chicago, but I did one in London. We had a bunch of 17-year-olds there, and I just thought, wow, this is
not too many
this
Manhattans.
This is really cool. This is really cool. So I feel optimistic about it.
Yeah, there's never been so much information or so much motivation available.
Yeah, exactly.
To people. I can pull up Instagram and I can see a quote that will get me going. But
yeah.
I can also pull up pornography. So.
Yeah. Sometimes both at the same time, actually. It's just like it's just like a girl with huge tits and then like
the point is my
David Goggins quote.
Yeah.
And that's what my thumbnails are sometimes.
Yeah.
You know what? There's two ideas of like what's a gentleman, right? And to some people it's like this holier than thou, Catholic, straight-laced, never sins.
This pristine knight.
Yeah, exactly, which is kind of unattainable, to be honest. And then there's the other side of it, which like honestly was always my original vision, which was like what 1960s Playboy represented, which is like a good time. It is enjoying women. It is enjoying getting dressed up. It's about the good life. And I think my channel probably exists somewhere in the middle. So yeah, naturally, like there's probably a decent percentage of my audience that kind of enjoys seeing like a slightly more provocative image. I do. I took some of them myself. And then some people get offended by it, but they still clicked on the video to comment on it.
That's all you need.
And honestly, those videos, I don't do it for the views, but they do. It does help. It does help. And we're naturally drawn to that. Like, we can't help it. You see a thumbnail and, you know, I might have like Clint Eastwood on the left, Sean Connery on the right, and then some like hot girl in
Salma Hayek in the middle.
yeah,
Sydney Sweeney
in the middle. But hey, we can't help that we're drawn to those
Do you have
things.
a primarily male audience?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
it's like 92%
Okay.
on YouTube. Instagram is a
YouTube.
bit more 70-30.
I would guess so. It's
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I didn't ask you what you think. What is a gentleman to you?
Oh man, we're doing that question.
That wasn't even on the list. I was like, Gen Z. Yeah, that's a question I have to ask.
I know, gosh, man. Well, I get asked this question a lot. My answer changes every time. I like to go back to the actual root definition of the word, right? Gentle and man. It comes from the French gentle homme. Basically means the same thing. So on one hand, we have the male element of it, masculine, capable, creative, protective, strong, loving, right? Very masculine qualities. But then what counters that is the gentle side. And this doesn't mean like, oh, I'm so gentle. It means sophisticated to me. It means worldly. It means intellectual. It means in pursuit of artistic discoveries, cultural enrichment, kind of what I would say living the good life.
Yeah.
It's the combination of those two. And what I didn't see out there was so much self-improvement content out there, but it was like, shave your head, go in monk mode, don't go out, society's evil.
So all this extreme.
Yeah,
one-sided
exactly.
improvement tips.
And I honestly just like didn't see at all the types of like the good life that I liked, which was getting dressed up, decorating your apartment nicely, right? At the time, it was making cocktails. I don't drink anymore, but okay, I enjoy food. You know, I enjoy traveling. That to me is just as important as the whole self-improvement thing. I mean, I don't spend a lot of time personally on what I would call self-improvement outside of exercise.
I think it's turned into more of a lifestyle.
I think there are things that you can do in your everyday life that reduce your need for it.
Yeah.
Like I'm very undistracted in my day-to-day life. I don't spend a lot of time on social media. I don't even like listen to a lot of music, to be honest, you know, because I just don't want these noise all the time. I'm very peaceful. So I don't feel like I don't need to meditate as much because I'm chilled out. Doesn't mean it's not beneficial, but yeah. And I spend a lot of time just, you know, I think about what I'm grateful for. You know, I don't need to journal it. Maybe it helps some people, but yeah, it could become like a part-time job if you do all of these things. You know, I've got to ice plunge, I've got to do my grounded walk, I've got to do all this. I think, fuck me, it's like 11:30. Let's get to work. Yeah. So it's self-improvement to me is whatever your goals are and then whatever you're doing on the way to reach them. So for me, like physique is one of them. You know, work is one of them. But you know, just between those two, that's like most of my day gone. Yeah.
Amazing. So that was my final question for you specifically.
Yeah,
This is the final question I ask all my guests.
Oh, okay.
As a
This is like Diary of a
wrap
CEO.
up. Yeah.
We have a
just like
tradition
that.
on this podcast where
We do. I learned it from him. You know Chris Williamson?
Oh yeah, I love Chris.
Yeah, he does this. Everybody has their own like sign off. What are James Lawley's words of wisdom?
Oh god, that's the last question.
That's the last question.
I give you two that have been
That was quick.
On
You
my-
can take your time if you need.
I don't have them, you know, in my mind, but
Give me two, give me
I'll give
two.
you two things that I've been reflecting on lately. I don't have any tattoos, but if I was going to get a tattoo, if I had to, I'd get this. It's called Amor Fati. Maybe you're familiar with this.
Love your fate.
Nietzsche idea. Yeah, love your fate. Everything that's happened to you or will happen to you. I don't believe that things happen for a reason, but I do believe that you can find reason. You can find a lesson. And you can try and work against the things that have happened to you, be swallowed up by regret, shame, all of that kind of thing. Or you can just be grateful that, you know, they've made you into the person you are. I mean, like, some things are harder to swallow than others, right?
Yeah.
You know? But I'm really interested in that. And then another thing that I have actually on a post-it note on my bathroom mirror right now is from The Art of War. It is, I'm paraphrasing this now, it's seize what he desires and he will be entirely at your will.
To the
So
opponents.
yeah.
Okay.
So literally, he's talking about war
Right.
of like kind of like a blackmail situation of like, I've
Yeah.
taken what you want,
Yeah.
so you'll do whatever I want. And I put it there because I was trying to think of like a way that this could translate to ordinary life and not necessarily be a bad thing. And I think that we see that today on social media and in marketing, in the sense that, even I think I do this in a positive way. It's like, oh, you want to dress like James Bond. You want to have that elegance of Cary Grant. Like, I've seized that. I've made a video about this.
Okay.
I'm trying to embody
Now you
that.
offer
Yeah, I'm
it
trying
up.
to embody
I
that.
see. Yeah.
Now I present you something which hopefully is valuable.
Yeah.
And all I really ask in return is that people watch it. And
It's much more positive.
yeah, and like by
way to do it.
yeah,
Than the war.
Exactly. Well, most people read that book these days not for war, but for the strategy of life.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that would be my.
I have it on my bookshelf actually.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good one. I'm gonna make a video about it soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I made a video about the Prince, kind of as an
The
experiment.
Prince is sitting in my backpack right now.
Right. Yeah.
I've yet to get around to it.
Okay. I encourage you to like watch a lot of YouTube videos while
I think it was after I watched your video I bought the book.
See.
Yeah.
Influencer. Yeah, watch a lot of YouTube videos about it while you're reading it, because he's gonna go on about fucking Cesare Borgia and the Duke of Milan.
Like I saw what you talked about. And I was like, if I gotta watch, I gotta read the whole book. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
but you'll get the wisdom
go.
from it for sure.